got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war. And I've been shutting down the stars. When it rains and it pours. And I'm ready for some more.
And welcome to Put That Coffee Down, the freight sales podcast for closers. My name's Kevin Hill here at FreightWaves, joined again with my special co-guest host here, Chris Jolly, the freight coach. How are you doing today, Chris?
Doing great, Kevin. Thanks again for having me back. I'm looking forward to today's episode as always.
It's going to be a great episode. We're going to talk about leads. I love talking about leads. I know a lot of people don't like leads. They like the selling, the closing, the presenting. I like all that too, but I really like leads. I like leads and prospecting and getting a system in place where you present more, you close more, you bring in more gross margin, more dollars of revenue into your pocket.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think this is such an imperative topic to cover because there's so many people out there who are just kind of shooting from the hip in regards to their leads and their prospecting and everything else. And you know, it's such those are one of those scenarios where the minutes add up to hours and so on, and days and so on of lost productivity when you're just out there trying to shoot from the hip every single day. So yeah, it's something that it's a great topic and it's such a huge part of the sales process.
You're exactly right, Chris Jolly. Time is money. And if you're out researching leads on dead ends, finding unqualified leads more than qualified leads, you're burning time, you're burning your most scarce resource, and that is time. You know, that is more, your productive time is what you should be out selling all the time. Go sell, not out researching leads, not on Google Maps. I've spent so much of my life on Google Maps trying to find leads that I can't stand it. I can't stand Google Maps. I know it's useful. A lot of people use it, but if you're using Google Maps, there's a lot of better ways to do it than that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm from the school of, working for a big box broker early on in my career. We had every tool at our disposal, so it's like, and then when you do switch over, and when I went to go work for a startup, now Google Maps was our lead generation tool. Like we were on there all the time. So it's like, you do have to develop a system at that time to really make it as efficient and effective as possible, because otherwise you're going to sit there and spin your wheels time in and time out. And, that's also not to say that there are some downfalls of some of the big software that's out there, because it somehow lets those roadside meat markets and gas stations slip in there. And when you're really not paying attention, you're just grinding out your calls every day, you're going to end up calling a couple of those too. So, it's I think the lead generation process is something that I'm glad that we're going to be speaking about this in depth today.
I am too. I am too. I love this topic. We have James Fry here from TLS Logistics. Good afternoon, Dane Adams. Happy President's Day from Salt Lake City. It is President's Day. It is a national or federal holiday, I should say.
Yeah.
And then Dane Adams again. Chris Jolly, love your Freight Coach show.
Thank
and
you.
Brian Volker, Fleet Director and Fleet Manager. From St. Paul, Minnesota. I think it's a little bit cold in St. Paul, Minnesota, right? Right, Chris? Isn't that your home territory?
Yeah, that is. I mean, the Twin Cities and northwestern Wisconsin's my old stomping grounds. Was where I was born and raised. And talking to my dad lives in a little town called Siren, Wisconsin, and it was like 40 below on Saturday night when we were talking. And that is just another Wisconsin, Minnesota winter right there, unfortunately. And it is brutal. I mean, that just speaks. I mean, there's parts of this country right now, especially down in Texas. I was talking to some of my clients this morning down in Texas. Same thing. It's wild what they're going through right now.
It is. One of my friends from Houston sent me a picture of snow in Houston. You're in Arizona right now. What's the temperature there?
70, t-shirt weather. It's gorgeous.
Nice. It's like 35 here in Chattanooga. Back home in Tulsa, it's 2 degrees right now, which we don't get that much there, except for here and there. It's going to be about 10 days of weather like that. It's horrible. But let's, as Dooner says, let's tip the band right now.
Yeah.
And thank you to our sponsor, Zembles. You want to crush your numbers, so stop random prospecting. Zimbles can tell you who is spending on shipping and gets you those leads instantly, taking your sales process from a 95% failure rate to a 50% success rate. Go to start.zimbles.com/free trial and sign up for a demo today. And we're really going to be talking about leads. Our guest today is Greg Johnson, the COO of Zembles. He's going to come in and we are going to define qualified versus non-qualified leads. We talk a lot, especially on this show, about warm and cold leads. And everyone has their different definitions of warm and cold leads. I think if you don't really know who you're calling, if you have not had any interaction with them, I consider that as cold lead.
Yeah.
If the warm lead, that's someone you've talked to before, maybe someone you're not even your company's talked to before, but somebody that you've talked to before or who has reached out to learn more about your service, your company, that type of thing. That's a warm lead. If it's not that, I always call it cold lead. So everyone has their own definitions. But what we don't talk about really is qualified versus non-qualified leads and how to qualify leads faster even before you get on the phone. I mean, that's the ideal
Yeah.
time to really qualify leads.
No, definitely. And I mean, and it's like, it's tough when you're, depending on the size of the organization you're involved with, a non-qualified lead to you might be the one that you've just wrote down in your Excel spreadsheet and you're going to be calling later on today. And a qualified lead is you verified that the phone number was working off of the one that you found. So there's so many varying degrees to this. And I think that, really trying to clean up that process it's another one of those soft costs that I speak about within a freight brokerage that doesn't really show up on your P&L. And
Hmm.
I think that if you can invest a little bit up front to kind of clean that up on the back end, that's, another area where you're going to improve your profit margin and or your gross margin and stuff like that. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like a lot of the brokers that I talk to and a lot of the people that I talk to in this industry, it's like their main thing is I want to improve my revenue. And I talk about this frequently. A lot of the revenue and additional revenue we're searching for is already within our own four walls. It just hasn't been brought to our attention that there's a more efficient way that we can operate in.
You're exactly right there. Amanda Miller is down in Birmingham, Alabama right now.
Yeah.
It'll be 19 degrees down here. So that's cold for Birmingham. Certainly, James Fry seems like he's up in the Great Lakes. Have helped us stay warmer than the rest of the country. So I'm not quite sure where James Fry is. Let us know, though. John Calloway, as a company, you have to define how valuable your time is. In my humble opinion, financial investment, or in my opinion, financial investment on the front end as it pertains to lead generation tools pays off throughout the initial phases of the sales cycle. What do you say to that, Chris Jolly? More
I
investment in the lead generation means more efficiencies on closing deals and the sales process in general.
I mean, I want to agree with that in theory, but at
Hmm.
the end of the day, if you're not having your reps, if you're not holding them accountable to making their calls and everything, you can have all of the tools in the world at their disposal. But if they're not actually going through with the process, then I think that it's a giant waste of money, But it's like somebody who's in startup mode. I am building my company from day one, dollar one, essentially. And it's like, I do believe in investing in that. I have joined multiple organizations to help put me in direct contact with the people who I want to speak with. So, it's one of those things that, you can have everything at your disposal, but if you don't have anybody actually following through on them, it's a lot of money to invest.
It is. It is. You certainly you have to have people following up on them, so you don't want to inundate yourself with leads. But I think in a lot of sales programs, having enough leads for your salespeople to be on the phone with, certainly qualified leads is well worth the investment.
Yeah.
There's work on the back end that you have to do in the process. Get that process down because it's well more efficient than paying your sales reps to go on Google Maps and search around and poke around in random distribution or industrial parks.
Very true.
Then that's what I found in my career. So I always
Yeah.
like to have leads that I can call. James Fry is in Michigan. That's what it is. So before we hop into our hot sales tip of the day, let's talk about Global Supply Chain Week at FreightWaves. It's our next virtual conference coming up next Monday. So a week from Monday, we'll be doing that. It is really the Global Supply Chain Week
Yeah.
plus because it's 8 days. It's 5 days next week, 3 days of the week after. And we start off with aerospace, military, and manufacturing. Then Tuesday, we have retail, building, construction. Wednesday, CPG, consumer packaged goods, food shippers. Thursday is all about the automotive supply chain. Then Friday is energy, metals, mining, agriculture, kind of those bulk loads that are
Yeah.
floating around all over the place. So those supply chains. And then Monday of the next week, March 1st through Wednesday, is global maritime. So
Ooh.
we will have everything on global maritime. There's a huge, traffic jam out in the West Coast.
Oh yeah.
50 ships out there. We have video up on FreightWaves.com. So if you haven't seen that, go see that. Greg Miller's story is phenomenal. So we're going to be talking about supply chain all over the place. Gary Vee is one of our keynotes. Everybody knows Gary
Who
Vee.
doesn't?
It's
Yeah.
worth the price of admission right there, right? Bob Corker, former senator, and a few others. Those will be published here very soon. You can go register and see the agenda at live.freightwaves.com. Once again, that's live.freightwaves.com. Come join us for that 8 days of full content, 8 days of 8 hours of content, 64 hours of supply chain. Once you go through that, you're going to know everything there is to know about supply chain. So
yeah, I'm a
join
freight
us
nerd.
there.
I'm a freight nerd at heart. So like, I love this stuff, and like, this is to tie all of that into what we're talking about in brokerage and everything. Like, it's not just like talking about trucks, like talking about the backup in the port of Long Beach, amongst other things, maritime freight, air freight, heck, even DOD freight. If there's anybody out there, like, there's so much to learn from these conferences, you guys. There's so much transferable information that is going to be presented that you can bring it and apply it to your day-to-day right now as a freight broker. So this is another a round of phenomenal tools at your disposal for everybody to sign up for.
It is. And if you go to live.freightwaves.com, you become automatically eligible for these great prizes: Top Golf Platinum membership, a golf club set, a Traeger grill. Everyone loves a Traeger grill.
Oh,
A Sonos entertainment set, having surround sound in your house, a coffee machine. I can't read it, but some kind of coffee machine, an 80-inch color TV. Not black and white, Chris Jolly, color TV.
There we go. I love it.
Yeah, I know,
I'll
right?
take that
AirPods
Traeger right
Pro.
now.
I know. AirPods Pro, Apple Watch, Apple TV, and a Tonal Home Gym, Xbox. So we have great prizes for everyone who registers. So go to live.freightwaves.com and register today. So let's jump into our sales hot tip right now, Chris. And that is, how important is the skill of delivering bad news in freight?
I mean, you better practice that one. It's, I think that I just take the approach at this point in my career, it just rip the Band-Aid off and deliver it. Just be 100% transparent, because in my opinion, you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who's involved in the shipping or receiving side of it that hasn't heard it before. And good news does not get better with time. So try, like the saying of, oh, let's just hope this one works itself out. Don't take that approach. Bring it with a solution. You can't just say that, oh, the truck's running late, I'll let you know. You got to have your information and your ducks in a line when you're presenting it, because I have had more growth with my customers as a broker in turbulent times and when things are essentially falling apart than I ever have when my pickup and on-time delivery are at 100%. These are the times where you make your money with your customers and you grow your revenue with your customers when things start falling apart.
Yeah, they're looking for solutions. I mean, just because you handle a load doesn't mean that's the reason why it went it went bad, or there's bad news to it, right? There's always bad news in almost every load, so embrace it. And time is the enemy of problems. If you throw time into the recipe and cook problems, time is the worst ingredient that you can have, right? It's like having too much hot sauce or something. It's going to burn you. The quicker you take care of it and provide solutions, and that's the thing. Once you learn to provide solutions, that's just opportunities. It's nothing but opportunities at that point. It's only bad or a negative if you don't have solutions. If you have solutions, great.
Yeah, I agree. And here's one thing: you cannot sell yourself on full visibility 24/7 and come up and let them know at the time of delivery that their truck's delayed by 6 hours. Can't do it. You
Yeah.
will lose
Hmm.
all credibility at that point. So it's like, to me, if you're going to sell yourself on that right away, bring it through. Bring it to their attention. It's not fun and it's not going to make the truck show up any faster. But I have never met a shipping or receiving manager who was upset that they knew of a problem 6 hours prior than 6 minutes after it was supposed to pick or deliver. So take that with a grain of salt or however you want. But use those tools that you're selling yourself on to your advantage. They will only strengthen your relationship, because it is alarming on how many don't actually follow through with that. So, take that with however you want, but use your tools to your advantage in good times and bad.
Yeah, John Calloway says transportation professionals equal professional problem solvers, and that's definitely what we do every single day, thinking on our feet. And those shipping or transportation managers, they might get upset because it's the load 6 hours late, right? But if you wait and tell them once it's 6 hours after it's due that, oh yeah, it's going to be 6 hours late, it's going to be magnitudes
Oh yeah.
of more frustration and blown credibility, and people being upset and screaming at you over the phone, which happens from time to time.
Yeah,
There's really no way around that. Sometimes
of course.
you can't always choose your customers and their reactions, but it does. What's some of the worst news you've ever delivered?
Uh, well, the worst news that I ever delivered, and I actually just put out a post about this last week, was I had a crane offload in California. I knew the truck was still in Albuquerque the day of delivery, and I didn't provide that information to him. I got hit with a crane bill. After the fact, that I just, kept, oh, the driver's hitting traffic. Oh, this is what's going on. Just a typical excuse book of Broker
Hmm.
101. And it just came back to bite me, and it was bad. And, I lost a customer, but I learned at that time, like, and here's the line that I live by, and I work with all my clients on right now: good, bad, or indifferent, I will let you know what's going on with your freight. These aren't fun conversations to have, but you know what? When you're calling your customer, for example, and you know what, they're not on site at the receiver, call the receiver ahead of time, let them know what's going on, because a lot of them are upset with the fact that they might have to make that difficult call to their customer, and those aren't fun. So take that off of their plate. And I know that that might seem like, oh, that's such an easy thing to do, but not a lot of people do it. And I think that if you go there with a solution, you reschedule it, you let them know you take that brunt from the receiver if they are upset about it, and you bring it to them and let them know, hey, it's rescheduled. I already spoke to so and so. It's going to be there tomorrow. Yes, they're not happy with it, but it's done and it's rescheduled. Your customer, the one who's paying you, they'll at least be appreciative that you took that off their plate. At least in my experience, I've only had to do that
Yeah,
100
yeah.
times. So
There's nothing worse than getting stuck with a crane bill, is
oh, yeah,
there? I mean,
especially
it's horrible.
Yeah, especially when
It's
it's taken out of your bonus check and you're a hot shot
yeah,
thinking
no,
you're going to
right.
lose your job, your career's over. Yeah, one of the many scenarios that I was involved in, Kevin, that I thought I was going to get fired. Thankfully, I never did.
I have a couple of like an oversized load. The same carrier used to do these from Kentucky to Prince Rupert, which is
Mhm.
just below Alaska, right? Great money, a great opportunity. Usually went very well. I didn't really have to worry about it too much, so I didn't really do my check calls really before visibility, especially in Canada. And of course, during a weekend, it happens. No one can reach the driver. He's 3 days late. I'm getting screamed at about it, and I'm calling the driver. It's going straight to voicemail, and he's somewhere in upper western Canada. What do you do? You're
Yeah.
kind of stuck. There's a crane out there waiting. It's a huge job site. They're getting back billed, and there's literally not much I can do. I'm going to the company. I'm going all the way up, but no one can reach the driver, and no one really knew what was going to happen. The funniest one though is that we had some columns, steel columns coming up from Laredo, from
Hmm.
Mexico, and this one was actually just delivering Western Oklahoma at a liquefied, or not liquefied natural gas, but natural gas processing plant
Yeah.
out in the oil fields. And it was a construction site. Landowner gets upset at the driver who was honking his horn, which was attracting the cows, and the landowner got mad and kicked the guy off. Would not let him come back on the property. So the real problem was that he hadn't offloaded yet. So he got
Mm.
kicked off. We don't. He's got to go. It took like 2 days for him to find someone to drive his truck back onto this landowner's property to unload that load, which of course was a crane load. And, everything's a crane load with me.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where you can really get in troubles, right? And it was like 2 or 3 days. It was 2 or 3 days late. I got, of course, you get the blame for it, even though the truck arrived on time. They just got into a tip at getting unloaded, and all of a sudden the guy can't come back. Got to find
Hmm.
somebody else. It's 3 days late, and you get hit with that. So it's always an adventure.
Yeah, 100%. That's what makes this job fun, Kevin. Come on, dude.
I know,
It's
right?
scenarios
It's
like
what gives
that.
us all ulcers too.
Yeah, wow, yes. Oh, that's a lot of ibuprofen at night. That's the remedy for that. My constant migraine.
I know. I know. Okay, let's talk about marketing.
Yeah.
You have the marketing tip for this week, Chris. Go with it.
I think that one thing that I read an interesting article this weekend, and it was about, everything's automated. And I get it. I'm all about technology and making our lives easier, but not letting that take away the human interaction that kind of comes along with the sales process. And it's like, you can have everything out there, but I think people still crave that. I know I do. Maybe I'm old school. Maybe people listening to this right now or watching this are like, who is this guy? But I still find the value in speaking to people on the phone. I don't want to just communicate via email or DM. I want to talk to you on the phone. And then if there's an opportunity to meet face to face, I want to meet face to face and discuss, because I just think that really helps you, deliver that passion that you have for your product, is when they can hear it in your voice, or, see the animation of when you talk. I talk with my hands a lot, so that kind of helps. But I think that, when you're just sending, I understand the importance of the automation up to a point, but don't lose sight of that there's like sales in anything. Marketing is always going to be people to people driven part of the business.
It always is. I mean, if you could sell something without sales, right? And a few products do with a lot of marketing,
Yeah.
but a lot of more complicated freight sales being more complicated type of sell, you always need salespeople, right? So you can't really automate too much. You want to automate where you can, and you want to include new technology, even if it's not really automation, right? So we were talking to Scott Ingram last week,
Yep.
Sales Success Media. If you haven't watched that, go back. He's got really great tips. He works with the top 1% of quota carrying salespeople out there. So he has a lot of great tips, and one of that, the use of video, right? So you can use video to stand apart, but you still have that personal touch, right? You're not really automating that. You're just finding a better way to communicate so they can see you, Chris Jolly, talking with your
Yeah,
hands, because I do
that's
that a
true.
lot too. I talk
Yeah.
with my hands too. So, you talk with your hands, and people know you, they see your face, to put a voice to it. It is much more compelling than writing an email. And Duna and I had a guest on a few months back. I can't remember the name of the topic, but she has studied this type of things, and we're visual creatures, right?
Hmm.
Language and writing, especially writing's only been around for 10,000 years, right? Visually, it's been eons before that, right? So when you think about it, I mean, we're programmed to have a connection,
Hmm.
a visual connection with people, and an audio connection as well. So if you can include those videos and and go old school personable videos, I think you're going to have a great success.
Yeah, I agree. The old school. Who would have thought, Kevin, that the old school would essentially turn back into the new school? At least in my opinion, that's the
Yeah.
way that I guess I'm just never going to deviate away from that. I'll automate everything to a point. I think because it's just smart overall from a time save
Hmm.
perspective. But when it comes down to the actual sales process, I don't know if I could ever get away from speaking to my clients or prospects or anything like that, because I want them. I want to meet them. Because it's like, not all
Hmm.
business is good business. And if there's a way for me to identify that, because like, you mentioned earlier in the show, time is the only resource we can't replace. Everything else is replaceable. And it's like, if there's something that, I know that I can speak to a different angle of than what an automated process could, or if I can identify that it's just not going to work out in the long run earlier in the process, that's a time save. And I want to do that. And I won't deviate away from that.
And you were mentioning it earlier as well, the problem solving aspect of freight sales. I mean, we have to put our heads together with our clients to solve those problems. So you might as
Mhm.
well start, getting really personable and in front of them with a real human connection. You have to have that human connection, right? You can't. You have to have that human connection because at a certain point, like every day that you move loads for people, you have
Mhm.
to solve problems. And unless you start off the relationship doing that and solving a problem to get your foot in the door, you're probably not going to make a sale, especially in freight sales.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's just too complicated. If you have a lower price point product, then you can do it with marketing and maybe automation, right? But once you get into a complex product that is always shifting and changing with different circumstances, I mean, this week is a perfect example with the weather. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many problems that are being solved, but created and being solved right now in freight and transportation because of the weather. I mean, there's a lot of new plans and impromptu type of talks about how we're going to get through this. And it's a very highly personable type of conversation, and it takes a lot of skill and experience to come up with solutions.
Yep. And to any inexperienced rep out there that's new in this industry, this weather thing, you should have been talking to them about it last week because you got to pay attention to
Yeah.
this nonstop. And this isn't like there should never be news. And you'd think that national news, like, hey, there's going to be a deep freeze or something's going on in the country, like everybody would know. You'd be shocked. I've had plenty of shipments who picked up down in Texas. Texas is a bad example for today, but I've had plenty of shipments that have picked up in the South, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, going up north that they don't know about a blizzard that's going on or that it's going to be 20 below zero because they're not paying attention to that. So we need to bring it to their attention.
Hmm.
And, it's just a value add, one that, a lot of us might take for granted in that sense. Like I'm wearing shorts today, but I know my family living in Minnesota definitely aren't wearing shorts. So,
Yeah, you have to be on top of all the trends. People buy from experts or
mhm.
people they perceive as experts, and that's one of the value adds that you can do. Get them prepared for the weather. Be a consultant and not a salesperson. But let's flip to leads. Let's go
Yeah.
back to leads and prospecting and qualified leads with Greg Johnson, the COO of Zembles, joining us right now. How are you doing today, Greg?
I am doing fantastic. How you doing, Kevin?
I'm doing great too. And you're down in South Florida right now, right? So
I
are
don't
you guys
know.
warm down there?
I don't think I want to admit it. Yeah, we are. We got some warm weather. It's not the time of year that you run around bragging about that, though. You can make a lot of enemies very quickly.
You definitely can. You definitely. So Greg, introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about your personal history and also Zimbles.
Yeah, so appreciate it. Appreciate you guys having me on. So in and around sales for my entire career, so 30 some odd years, doing just about anything you can in sales. Rep, bag carrying rep, inside rep, outside rep, manager, sales operations, you name it. Primarily in technology, but a combination of technology, then software and data. So I've spent the last roughly probably I guess 15, almost 20 years in data, and live in South Florida, and a wealth of love from four wonderful daughters and two grandsons and a couple dogs. So all good on that front. From a Zembles perspective, Zembles is an offshoot of a brainchild, I guess, that we had just by spending time listening to people and hearing of problems. And with massive amounts of data and technology, we're the ultimate data geeks. But we also are salespeople at heart.
Yep.
Myself, our CEO, our founder, everybody else. And what we did with Zembles is said, man, let's try to solve a problem. And Chris, you guys just said it. Time is the only thing we can't replace. Everything else is replaceable. The amount of time everybody, myself, God, if I could do it over again, I'd save all kinds of time chasing bad leads. And ultimately, Zembles is an incredible tool in an arsenal of tools that we've got to help really save that precious time and get it back in the pockets by getting people to better prospects more quickly.
Thanks for that intro, Greg. Let's talk about sales and sales in the time of COVID over the last year. Most of us have gone remote. Some of us come back to the office. There's a lot of people with a combination of in the office, out of the office. It's difficult to stay focused sometimes at home. you have 4 daughters. I mean, you have a house full of people and dogs. We met your dog during the sales and marketing
Yeah,
conference.
right, exactly.
So a lot of distractions. Much more difficult to get a hold of people. What have you been finding during these turbulent times? How sales has changed and how it's stayed the same?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it is interesting because I think a lot of us think I would have thought, okay, well, you're working from home, the distractions in the office, you're going to have more time. And I, for one, heck, we've been fortunate enough. Our employees have all been remote, but myself and a few of the other leaders here have been in the office. But, it's actually been a situation where you have less time. And everybody I talk to says that's at home. You got more distractions, taking more things out of your day, and multitasking is not what it used to be. You're zeroed in on Zoom calls and paying attention from start to finish. So what I'm hearing a lot now is really kind of a combination of things. But first and foremost, sort of broadly spoken, it's the use of automation. So to Chris's point, automate to a point, but don't take you out of that relationship. But automation, and more from the perspective of how can data be used to create efficiencies in all different functions, whether it be in the credit department or in what I love the most, which is the sales side of things. The contacts, mixed bag in some respects. I'm hearing a lot of people say, I'm getting more FaceTime via Zoom with senior executives or decision makers, that type of thing. But we're definitely seeing and hearing, unfortunately, with unemployment and what seems to be just a lot of job changes, it's getting harder and harder to get in touch with people at their phone or at their email. Maybe they're working from home, therefore you can't get them at their office number if you don't have their cell phone. Can you call their cell phone even if you have it? So there are a lot of questions like that. But I think it really is sort of a period in which salespeople are having to change their approach and just look at ways to do things vastly differently than they've done it in the past. And I love Chris's point, while maintaining that connection, which is hard because I'm used to doing it in person, just like Chris is.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. Chris, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think in regards to the cell phone approach, I think if you have it, I mean, I think today it's just like the office line. So I don't know. I'm of the belief where it's like if your cell phone number is visible, I think that sometimes it might throw text out there.
Yeah.
I that is actually one of the more efficient ways of prospecting is just shooting them a quick text. Especially after you've already tried to establish it, either via email or a voicemail or something like that, and you have their cell phone. I think it's a great angle, because I think texting is more like if you can text with a possible job candidate, why can't you text with a prospect?
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a lot of different schools of thought on it in terms of companies and what their marketing departments will allow people to do. But I would agree. I think heck, if you're going to get in touch with me, the best way to get me is going to be to text me because I can't read my email most of the day just because I'm on Zoom calls, et cetera. So it's a great way to get in touch. And I can't remember the last time I answered the phone on my desk. It sits there. It's convenient, but it doesn't do anything other than represent the past.
I know. So I want to ask you both this question is it's more difficult, and we were talking about it just now, but it's more difficult to pick up the phone and reach someone via phone, right? Because what if you don't have their cell phone number? All you have is the company number, right? Maybe that's the only thing you have in the CRM, and you're working those leads out of the CRM or wherever else. And all you have is a generic office number or maybe their mainline number, but they're not there anymore. And, as you said, I mean, a lot of people, if you do have an office line, you're not really answering it all that much anyway, and certainly now in COVID. So, Chris is a consultant. He consults salespeople. You're a data provider, Greg, and you're talking to salespeople all the time. So let's start with Greg on this, but I'd like to get both of your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so, the way I look at it, I'm always trying to look at a problem and say, is there a different way to approach it, right? And when I hear I can't get in touch with people or I'm having trouble getting in touch with people, and I've been saying it, my teams have been saying it forever and a day because prospecting has always been a game of numbers. So if you're going to get a lot of numbers in terms of companies to prospect to, inherent in that is a lot of people at those companies to prospect to. But I kind of, when I look at it, I say, what if I could solve the problem a different way and actually help with what Chris was talking about, which is time to get to know somebody? And what if I did that by reducing the number of contacts you needed, by reducing the number of companies that you had to pursue to get the best leads? And by doing that, you could heck, if you could imagine a world in which you could take down the number of companies that you needed by 900%, go from 200 to 20. Same thing with contacts. Problem eliminated in terms of the contacts, right? So a different approach. And it does then give you a lot of different things. Use video, you get time to do, time to spend on video, or time to spend on email communications, text communications, whatever it might be. So I think that's kind of how I look at it is let's solve the problem a different way. Let's eliminate what is the real problem.
Yeah. I think, 2 words, social media. Okay. Like we need to utilize, like information is at an overload right now. They're like, and that's just through, I know that we're talking about leads here, but through Google and social media, you can like, if somebody's not answering their phone, find a different route, you guys. Like this isn't 1980 anymore. We're using the yellow pages. Like you can legitimately see the structure of an entire organization by typing in the company name on LinkedIn alone. Okay. That lists everybody off. You can search by keywords, job titles, whatever it is, regions, doesn't matter. You can find all of that information. So for you to sit here and say you can't get a hold of somebody, to me means that you just don't want to try.
So let me just kind of build on that a little bit, Chris. It still takes you time to do that, right?
Yeah.
So
that's true.
If you could then reduce the amount of companies that you had to research to find the org structure, all that type of thing, either way, it's savings, right? So I think I agree with you. The social media thing is huge, and the presence and everybody that's out there on all these different tools that I'm learning every day from kids way younger than me. But I still look at it and say, man, but if you can refine the population that you're shooting at, it's a lot easier than trying to kill with a broader portfolio of people.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you can be very targeted in the freight type, the overall revenue, however you want to do, if you can refine that search down from, like you said, 200 to 20, and then you're calling your 20 targeted customers of what you're trying to go after. Yeah, that's a massive time save right there. And then that will help on your social media sales approach and your cold calling approach and your emails and however you attack that list. I think like that is like so vital to any organization right there to be able to have your target prospect down into a fine science at that point where it's a well-oiled machine and you're able so it's like you can take that, because a lot of brokers are KPI'd against their cold calls. It's like, now you're not calling 100 companies in a day. You're calling 35 companies that fit the exact profile of what you want to get after.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point, Chris. And let's take it to the next step, right? Let's define qualified leads and also the process of qualifying with Greg.
Yeah, for me, a qualified lead is somebody who actually has the desire to buy something that you're selling. And even better than desire is somebody who you would know has already bought or is buying that which you're selling. Right? So intent is like a New Year's resolution, doesn't mean you did it. Right? I could intend to go to the gym. Maybe I didn't. Don't ask that question. That wouldn't be fair.
And also the desire, the need, and the necessity to buy what you're selling, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So that to me is a qualified prospect. Get a rep to that person that needs what's being sold, and then the job of selling begins. Right. That's when it really takes off, as opposed to searching. Now you're selling, which is a lot more enjoyable.
So that's another good point, right? Searching rather than selling. So, Chris has been around freight brokerage. I've been around freight brokerage. In a lot of freight brokerages, you are responsible for the A to Z of lead generation, which is sometimes good. Though there's people who like that, but it costs a lot of time. It costs more time than it's worth if you can skip that process instead of paying your guys and girls, to research leads for 4 hours a day, which is
Right.
half their salary almost, just to
Mhm.
find people to call.
Yeah.
What if you streamline that?
Yeah, I completely agree. It makes it a heck of a lot better. I mean, the good news is there's a lot of data out there. The bad news is a lot of it isn't really accurate. Some of it is, things that we put up
Hmm.
on LinkedIn is as accurate as it's going to be from somebody who's putting it up on themselves. But it's so hard because the more data, I mean, the interesting thing about data is the more you have, the more horsepower it takes to really get the value from that
Hmm.
data. Otherwise, it's just a
Yeah,
snowstorm.
yeah. That huge wave of data is often worse than just having
Oh
specific or a little bit of data, because it takes a lot of horsepower to find out what's useful, what's not useful. So let's talk about Zembles, and kind of how you guys qualify leads, and how you package and deliver those.
yeah, yeah. So Zembles is interesting because when I look at the combination of data and the growth of data, how much data you can get and how
Hmm.
much unique data you get, then there's a corresponding increase in the need of horsepower and sophistication technologically. Right? And for
Hmm.
years, I was, little did I know it, would probably end up calling myself a self-proclaimed data analyst. Why? Because I was using a spreadsheet to try to figure out how to get better results for my reps. Right? So
Hmm.
if you think about that in our day-to-day life, I'm not a self-professed expert on music such that I could pick out a song that I like and find others like it based on the rhythms, the beats, and all the other things that go on in music. And I just covered everything I know about music right there. Same thing with movies, right? But I want a good song and I want a good movie. So why don't we apply technology to leads to do the same thing, right? And ultimately, Zembles is doing that. It eliminates the need to do any analysis. Just trust the process. Type in a
Hmm.
single business that you want to find more of, and Zembles will do all the work for you right there, instantly. Right? So the
So
notion of lists and doing that type of thing disappear. There's no need. You need lists when you need thousands. You need
So
Zembles when you need 20.
would you say that? So like I know I watch YouTube all the time, and I know that
Yeah.
after so is that what Zembles does essentially? Is it finds that profile that you're searching, and then it auto feeds you leads based off of your search history?
It does, and yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So YouTube does it based on your search history and others. So we use machine learning as sort of the technical term for it.
Yeah.
Machine learning, some people call it artificial intelligence, two different things, but they perform arguably the same thing. So it's letting computers do the thinking and then learning from past behaviors, whether they be your personal behaviors or others. And that's exactly what it does, and it continues to get smarter over time, and therefore surfaces better prospects. Not only better prospects, but it's finding prospects that aren't being found.
Hmm.
Right? I mean, the fact is, we're driving by, or used to be driving by, walking by, and not even knowing that there were prospects in our territories that we didn't know of, and now Zembles helps surface those. And it's because the power of being able to analyze massive amounts of data. You don't have to have every bit of data. You don't have to have perfect data, because you can get a lot by looking at a lot of different pieces really fast.
Zembles allows you to spend more time selling, which is what you're
Exactly.
really getting paid for, right?
Exactly.
Selling to more qualified leads, and on our read here at the beginning of the show, it takes you from a 98% failure rate to, or a success, wait, 2% success rate to 50%
Yeah.
success rate. For
Exactly.
everyone out there who's
That's good.
who's hard to conceptualize the math behind that, can you give an example of
Yeah.
how that happens?
Yeah. So, I mean, numerically, it's, if you have 200 leads today, on
Hmm.
average in the industry, I'm talking to sales leaders, sales reps, marketing, sales operations professionals in this industry all day long. And out of 200 leads today, typically the yield would be something less than 5%. Right? So you're talking
Oh yeah.
10 leads or less out of those
Hmm.
200. So you spend time on 190 leads to get to 10 qualified prospects. With Zembles, you're going to take it down to you only need 20. And I would argue you probably need less than that. You probably do it 15 because the performance is usually better than 51 and 2 or 50%. But out of 20 qualified prospects or 20 that Zembles will give you, history has been experience from testing from those that have tested and are using Zembles today. They're finding that 1 out of every 2. In many cases, it's instead of 50%, it's 80% or 90% that are qualified. So you reduce all the time that's needed on the research, on the nurturing, and or just the wasted call. You have a 30-minute call only to find out they don't need, and you're like, oh, wow, I got a new friend in such and such, but unfortunately, friends don't put commission dollars in my pockets.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, like a lot of what I'm hearing right now is what me and you are both firm believers in, and that's that niche, especially in brokerage.
Yes.
Because there's just too much freight out there to attack it on simultaneous phone calls. And that's one thing that I work hand in hand in with all of my clients is establishing that niche region and that niche freight type. And if you can, bring it out a little bit to their freight spend or, annual shipments or something like that in there, like that is from a startup perspective, that's smart money spent at that point, because I mean, like I said, I'm in the beginning stages of my business right now, day $1 one essentially. And to translate that over to a day $1 one freight brokerage, like that is going to help you be able to spend your time more effectively building your business the way that you want to build it, as opposed to like what Greg just said, they're having a 35-minute phone call with Nancy in Reno, Oklahoma, and you got a great friend there now, but they don't have any freight for you at the end of the day.
Well, and Chris, it takes us to a point where we were talking about, how many times we've had to get on Google Maps and things like that. You find a business that kind of seems like that they check all the boxes, right? They're in an industrial park. It looks like trucks coming in and out. You get on the phone, you do all this research, maybe 5-10 minutes, maybe longer, right? And you get on the phone, and what you find out is that they ship about 1 or 2 trucks a week or maybe a month, right? Something far below the volume level you need for this to be a qualified prospect, and you don't know until you pick up the phone and call. You do this research, and that could be 20 minutes. If you get somebody on the phone, that could be another 10 minutes of realizing this isn't a qualified prospect. There's your 30 minutes right there. So I've been down that rabbit hole many times, and it sounds like with the data that Zembles has with those prospects, from the get-go, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much data. I mean, thousands of data elements that we leverage on any one business, but the most important is verified spend data. So I not only know what they're spending on freight, but I also understand what they're spending across their entire supply chain. And there's a lot of predictiveness that comes from understanding other things they're buying. Industrial supplies usually means they've got LTL. Anything with construction equipment or lumber or something means they've got TL, open bed TL, right? So there's a lot you can extract from that. Even if I don't have the TL or LTL spend, don't need it. I can get it in a lot of other ways. So that's where you kick open these unique opportunities and find the businesses that don't have the loading dock and wouldn't be found using Google Maps or whatever else it might be. But it's the hard part for me, and I work in it every day, literally here talking to people about it, and I still struggle on my own sales teams to resist the temptation to go in and want to filter and to do all that work myself, right? It's like, dude, just stop. You stopped doing it at home on television and music a long time ago. Why are you still doing it? Trust the process. And it's a hard thing to get through change. But once you get through, you're like, whoa, whole new world. Now I got to manage my people differently, and you get a lot more real measurement of the quality of your sales people as opposed to your searching people.
That's a really good point. You have searching people who are really good at researching leads and really good, then other people who are really good at sales. And those are not the same skill. And a lot of people don't possess those same skills, certainly. So, Greg, talk about prospecting stories, funny prospecting stories. We did this with your interview in the Sales and Marketing Conference that you can find live.freightwaves.com. You can also find your interview with us on there, or you can find it on past episodes of Put That Coffee Down. But give us a recap of the content.
Yeah, so there were some pretty interesting stories that came in. I will say that. So we picked two winners. So I'll announce the winners if that's all right, Kevin. Is that okay to do right now?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead. Let's do it.
the first, and I'll give you a quick summary of the story just because it is pretty funny. So the first one is Nick Starker at Global Trans. And he kind of recounted a story that was when he was working for a small carrier back in the 90s. And he was doing prospecting about 80% of his day, making calls all the time off of lists, including the Thomas Register leads. And he said not much information on them and had to really dig deep, but he really relied on his discovery calls. And in one particular case, he had a fantastic discovery call to the point where he realized it was a wildly different product mix than he is used to running into. And as he went back to the ranch, which this was not necessarily the situation with his weirdness with his prospect, but what happened when he went back to the home office with all of his peers and his office manager, he realized he needed the NMFC code. And unfortunately, it wasn't one of the ones he was familiar with. So he walked into his office manager, who he described as being very grandmotherly, which I can only imagine having to have this conversation with my grandmother. And said after he mustered up his energy and his confidence to be able to do it, still a little bit of a young buck green behind the ears, said, could you help me find the NMFC code for the adult toy business? He claims that after about 10 seconds, he turned around and walked out with a red face, and then forever lived in the shame and all the other names that came from, nicknames that came from all of his sales brothers and sisters. So I said, oh boy. So that's pretty good. When you find the ultimate lead and you realize you're like, oh man,
I know. I can only imagine the nicknames that they have.
Oh God.
Oh, I know.
It's funny, as I was reading it, I'm like, oh, I'm like, all right, let's get out.
I know, right? I have about 10 right now that I can think of.
Yeah. So that was a pretty good one. There were some. I mean, there were the number that came in with having called and the person was no longer living was alarming too. I was like, all right, that's slightly morbid these days. But the second one that was left off the page is Jordan Richardson with currently with Fusion Logistics. I've been reaching out to a prospect who is a bag manufacturer, and sounds like the sales campaign was going along real well. Had found the decision maker, and was having all kinds of discussions that had actually moved on to the finance manager. And as he's on the call with the finance manager, somebody else jumps in, interrupts the meeting, takes over the meeting, and introduces himself as the decision maker, who clearly had just had his own people doing an end around on him, fired Jordan's contact on the phone on the spot, and proceeded to tell Jordan to pound sand because 95% of their business is customer routed and the other 5% was given to a local carrier who's a family friend. So stay away from that, Jordan. So Jordan left disappointed and bewildered, he said. But hey, he's still got a great story to tell. So nothing like walking into the middle of an internal battle and getting ambushed by the true decision maker when you thought you had the decision maker on the phone.
Oh my gosh.
So that was quite a brutal story. So we're going to give both Nick and Jordan a free license to Zembles for 6 months. So we appreciate the contribution of the stories, and I've got some others too that we can share in the future. Kevin, there are some good ones, so it's pretty fun.
Oh, that is good. Those are two really good ones. And do you still have the site up to where people can go in and fill out a form for this, or go ahead and give that out.
Go in and sign up at I think it's zembles/start.com, and you can get a link and sign up for a free trial and jump in and give it a free trial. We'll reach out and set you up and get you credentials to log in and give it a shot and talk to the team.
Perfect. I do have an audience question here. Asking for advice, Amanda Miller asking for advice on gatekeepers, and kind of, a quick answer on your advice for that.
So, gatekeepers, to me, I'm a believer in sell the gatekeeper.
Yep.
Right. What do you got? Because that gatekeeper oftentimes has the ear of whoever it is that's going to make the decision. So I'm a big fan on never ruling them out, establishing great rapport. To Chris's point earlier, the human side is usually pretty important, but they're also, I find that they know their business well enough because they're keeping the gate for somebody usually important enough for making decisions that they understand the potential impacts. So have your value prop down, make sure you can talk about your unique ability to execute, and have the buzzword that'll say, here's why I should speak to that person. But I'll also say, know your business, but more importantly, know their business. Because it doesn't matter how well you know freight brokering. What matters is you understand the levers that are unique to their business. If you don't know that, you're going to look like a dope when you get on the phone. So if you can speak their language and hit them with the important stuff, make friends with a gatekeeper, you can never go wrong with a friendly gatekeeper.
No, you can't.
Wholeheartedly agree with that. You need allies across the board in your customers. It's not just the decision maker, it's every person who's involved in that organization. You want them to know your name and why you are the best at what you do.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Greg. And what was the website again?
It's
throw that out there.
Zembles.com/start. And you can just hit Zembles.com.
Perfect.
There's a way to get it right off Zembles.com, even if you need to hit it that way. And then I think we got a webinar coming up later this week as well.
We do, yes. I forgot, on Thursday, right? Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Yep. You have a webinar, and you can get those. You can sign up. I'm not quite sure the address to sign up. Sorry, but if you're subscribed to FreightWaves emails, you've gotten a couple emails. You probably get a couple more promotional emails on that.
And there's a link on Zembles.com as well, so anybody could go there and hit the link there too. Yeah, awesome. I appreciate your time.
Perfect.
As always, gentlemen.
As always, thank you very much, Greg.
Yeah, thanks, have Greg. A great day. Stay warm wherever you are.
You too.
Although you're wearing shorts, Chris, so I guess you got it covered.
Yeah,
right?
I'm Greg. I'm in Arizona. We're good.
Silent high five and smile between the two of us, right?
All right. Thanks, Greg. So Chris Jolly.
Yeah.
Chris Jolly. What's one of your wildest prospecting stories?
Oh, yeah, I have nothing like that. I guess the and this isn't that wild overall, but like I used to show up at places in Reno, Nevada, and the surrounding areas, and I had a guy who was extremely sarcastic, and I'm a very sarcastic person too, but I didn't pick up on it right away. And then he pretty much told me to get off of his blanking property, or he was going to call a cop on me. And I'm like, wow, you couldn't have just said not interested, but yeah, that's pretty much the wildest thing. I've never had anybody call themselves, this is the decision maker, talking like, I just feel like when you hear a story like that, Kevin, they've been waiting for that opportunity for years.
Oh yeah.
That was the tee. That was just put out there, fastball right down the middle. You're sending that one 500 over the fence. You've been waiting for that. How about you though? What's the wildest one you have?
The wildest one I had, and we'll talk off the air about Reno because I've gone up there a couple times to prospect myself, and though there's not a lot of places to prospect up there, so I might have been in the same place or gotten kicked off. I don't think I got kicked off, but may have never made it through the gate on it. So my wildest is Kansas City, Fortune 500 company. I'm like, we're going to Kansas City. This is going to be awesome. Didn't really think about it. The person that we're meeting with was a hide analysis or hide analyst. I'm sorry. I don't know what it is. I mean, whatever, right? It doesn't really matter to me. We're going, we got, 8, 9, 10 meetings booked for the day. It's going to be good. This is the biggest company out there. Walked in, it was around the stockyards in Kansas City. Walked into the door. It was a industrial place, neighborhood. So nothing looked really nice. But walked in and got hit with this odor that almost, both of us, me and Kyle Keith, we almost dropped to the floor. It was like rancid. I'm like, what is this place? And they took us back to the conference room, and I'm sitting there trying to talk, and I realized, it is a place, it's a warehouse for wet cowhides. That are shipped to Mexico and tanned and then come back on furniture or whatever. Like entire warehouse of wet cow. It was the worst. For 2 days that just followed me around. It was incredibly awful. and I started moving a couple of them, but the drivers know what wet cowhides are, and they don't want they don't want anything to do with it. It was a horrible customer. I moved a couple loads, didn't cover a couple, and that was it. But we are running short on time. So again, Global Supply Chain Week is coming up here a week from today. Go to live.freightwaves.com to sign up and get registered for the conference and all those great gifts. And that's the end of this episode of Put That Coffee Down.
I got friends only wanna talk business. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I got expensive, cause winning's expensive. I've been reading all the war. And I've been shutting down the stars. When it rains and it pours. And I'm ready for some more.